with the amazingly wonderful and talented Mike Pecci. Did I say it right, Pecci?
Yeah, Pecci's the right way. Pecci, yeah, it's Pecci. That's the way I've adopted. I don't know. There was another way to say it. And I don't know why I started talking about it. Yeah, no, it's Pecci.
Are you now Italian, correct?
Half Italian, half Irish. Fully Italian by if you eat my food, essentially. My mother is consistently giving me shit because she's like, what did you forget about the Irish side? And I'm like, what are you contributing? Alcoholism and boiled food? Yeah, it's fine.
Which is funny because you posted something on Instagram probably about a week or two ago where you were making homemade pasta. And I was just like, ugh. I mean, I'm my dad is on my dad's side, I'm Assyrian and Armenian, and on my mom's side, German and English. So, but ironically, one of my favorite foods is Italian food, and then of course my wife is Chinese. So, it's like I've just got this kind of UN thing going on with food, but also too, if you gave me the opportunity, the two things that I would probably eat the most would be burgers and pizza. So pizza's not really Italian, but
yeah, but it's assumed to be Italian,
right?
So
right. But my wife started. So when my wife and I started dating, I probably shouldn't mention that we used to go to the Olive Garden all the time, but especially when it comes to authentic Italian food. But
I'm not judging you, brother. I was born in America, so it's fine.
But we had a dish there that they don't make anymore, and so that's a big reason why we stopped going there altogether. But she started making it here at home, and oh my gosh, so amazing. But
what was it like, the never-ending pasta bowl?
No, it was the chicken con broccoli. That was our favorite dish at Olive Garden, and they stopped making it. I think one of the last times we were there, they actually made it special for us. They were nice, but
ooh, you're those people.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you guys make that thing that's no longer on the menu? I know that those line cooks in the back have a rough night, and I'm that that's coming in.
Hey, I've lived in
broccoli back there by any chance?
I've lived in Los Angeles now longer than I've lived anywhere else, so it's rubbed off on me. Okay.
No worries, man. I'm just kidding.
I don't live on the West Side, but I can be just as pretentious as a West Sider.
Yeah. Well, we're East Side too, man. We're East Side LA as well, and then Gina, my girlfriend, she's got a piece of Armenian in her, and then we're in like Little Armenia over here.
Oh, okay. I know exactly where you are. Okay, yeah. We're just over the LA County border into San Bernardino, so we're quite a ways away. So
gotcha. Yeah. That's
but enough about all of that. So I first became aware of who you were through Puget Systems.
Okay.
And saw that you had partnered with them to when you had made, was it one or more than one film? Because you've made multiple films.
Yeah, Puget and I partnered together. Puget's been such a great. They're an amazing company, an amazing group of guys. I love those guys so much.
Wholeheartedly agree.
They were sponsoring me prior to all this stuff. They were sponsoring me when I was just doing commercials and music videos and stuff like that. And then they ended up jumping on the show, so they sponsored the show.
Oh, okay, great.
Podcast.
Okay, the podcast, okay.
And then they also were like, hey, we'd like to get involved with the movies. And so they ended up helping out with Who's There, the short film. Who's There. So, but I've done 2 shorts. I've done, proofs of concept is what they call them.
Right,
but,
exactly.
I've done that, and then 12 Kilometers was the other one. So
now, so you were doing the podcast before you did the short films?
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
12 KM I did, Jesus, man. 7 years ago at this point. And then maybe 7 years ago. I don't know. Dude, I'm passenger in a DeLorean right now. It's just
no, trust me, I understand.
Straight flames. I'm like, how old am I now? What the fuck? It's 42. God damn it. So it's now. Yeah, I think it was like 7 years ago.
Give everyone a plug for your podcast. Go ahead and plug your podcast. Tell everyone what it's about.
So I've been directing commercials and music videos and movie shit now for about 20 years. God damn, 20 years.
Right.
And one of the things that I noticed, there's this old saying that it takes 10,000 hours to become a professional in anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there hit this point with me where it took 8 years of hard work, 8 years of like digging in and learning the craft and learning the trade for me to start to have like clients come out of the woodwork.
Right.
For people to call me up and ask for my work and to be recognized for my work. That's a long time. And 10 years in, I started to get emails from younger filmmakers, like, how are you doing this and what's going on? And we had a lot of fans of the music videos that we were doing.
Right.
And I would just be writing emails all the time. Like, hey man, how do you set up your company, or how do you, like serious questions on how stuff was done. And I've always been a firm believer in giving back. I've always been a really firm believer in handing someone essentially a footstool.
Right.
Because if we're not doing that, then the business doesn't develop.
I agree with
We
you.
don't develop as humans.
It used to be in the old time, golden age of film. I mean, there was a mentorship protege relationship that was that was integral.
Yeah, totally, man. And it's always been sort of an apprentice business anyways.
Yeah.
And then, it's hard for a lot of people to get in and out of the business. And so I was doing a lot of emails for years, and then I just looked around, and I did like a Google search or a YouTube search. I'm such a 42-year-old. I did a YouTube search, and was like, oh, I can find 1,000 videos on what it's like to open up a Red camera box. I can find 1 million videos on how cool I am when I'm standing next to a Ferrari that was parked across the street, and I just happen to have my camera on me. But there wasn't anybody really talking about what honestly happens, what the real life is, and what the risks and rewards are when you decide that you're going to leave that 9-to-5 job.
Yeah. When
you decide that you're going to jump off and do that. And so I was like, okay, that's the origin of what the podcast was like, it's a lot faster for me to do a show than it is for me to answer all these emails.
I know.
And then the show ended up developing over the years, and I started to interview professionals that I really respected and people that I wanted to work with. And that sort of came about because when I got my management and I got my agents, when I first got signed, I reached out to them and I said, hey, while we're waiting for miracles to happen, can you put me in contact with some of these crew people? Because it's good for me to know them early on. It's good for me to form a bond with these folks and form a working relationship. And we'll work out all the kinks before one of these things goes. And they're, the response generally is like, well, wait until you have something. And I'm like, well, that it's not the point. The point is that I need to know these guys first. And we need to, let's go on a couple of dates before we, go get married, And so then what I did with the podcast was I was like, look, I'm going to use this as an excuse to get somebody on the show for like 2.5 hours, shower them with compliments, and also get to meet them. And so it's been good for that. Like, I've met like a lot of really, really great and amazing people in the show since we moved from the East Coast to California.
Right.
The show's just gotten bigger, and
I was going to say you probably have not necessarily a better crop of people, a different crop of people.
Yeah, there's a lot of, especially now with COVID too. There's a lot of people out here that are out here looking for like good attention.
Yeah.
And so it's not hard to convince, as long as you can get to them.
Right.
I've been consistently writing to Arnold Schwarzenegger, so if he by any chance is listening to this show, go
if
through
Arnold
your inbox.
Schwarzenegger is watching this, I will.
Somewhere in between those millions of I love Predator messages that you have, there's a note for me saying that I'd like to have you on the show. We'll specifically talk about your mini pony the whole time. So I'm very interested.
Just don't talk about him being governor. No, I'm kidding. So now you had mentioned, there's a couple of things that you just talked about that I want to hit on. One of them was you talked about having an agent and manager. How, because there are people, your philosophy in terms of why you started your podcast is very, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to do this and get you to come on here, is because you and I have a similar. First of all, you and I have a similar passion for filmmaking, number one. Number two, the whole idea of giving back and the whole idea of helping kind of that next generation of people coming up, because like you had just said, you can find 100 unboxing videos on a Red camera, but how many videos are there out there actually showing somebody how to use the camera, and not just like, okay, this knob does this and this knob does that, but actually go out and shoot something.
And so and then more importantly, how many videos and how many tutorials are out there with people that don't do the job to begin with? And I hope, I drop F-bombs like there's no tomorrow.
I know.
If you got a censor,
I do.
But there are so many people out there that claim to be professionals that aren't necessarily professionals.
Yes.
And essentially it became this thing to get views and to get followers and ultimately to get advertising revenue.
Yeah.
Where people are just regurgitating what some other YouTuber said to them.
Yes. And, that was also a big reason, kind of the big impetus for me to actually kind of do something. I've had this YouTube channel almost since the very beginning of YouTube. So what was that, 2005? I think I signed up for this channel in about 2006. And outside of a couple of music videos that I directed way back then, I haven't really done anything with this channel. And, and that was exactly, you hit the nail on the head for me, is I started seeing all of these, I'm going to do air quotes here. I can't because the microphone's right here. But I started seeing all these professionals who were talking about this or talking about that. And it's like, no, that's not why you do that. And you do it this way for a specific reason. Like there are very specific reasons why you do all of these things. And so I wanted to kind of get on. It's funny because when I started the journey, I didn't realize how much work it was going to be. So I do give these people some mad props for churning out content consistently, especially those who do it with a modicum of professionalism and how it looks, because it is hard. And even with my background in it, balancing family and all of those kinds of things, it's a challenge just getting a piece of content up a week. And, and that's kind of the bare minimum that you kind of need. But at the same time too, it's like, for me, I'm very much a writer and director. And so I have to, sit down and I have to script things and I have to figure out, so I have a huge amount of respect for people like Peter McKinnon, he's probably my favorite YouTuber. But Peter McKinnon also brings an element of real professional filmmaking to it. And so, there's that aspect of it. But like you, I wanted to not set the record straight, but I wanted to put content out there by real people in this business who do things. And that was also a big reason why I wanted to start this show, is I have 20 years worth of relationships with people. And there's no reason I shouldn't be talking with them and saying, hey, how did you start? What did you do?
Yeah, totally. I completely understand that. And I don't know. It's an interesting issue, because it seems like the more professional you are and the more honest you are to a certain extent, the less niched you are, the less sort of emotionally driven you are, the harder it is to get numbers. And you start to see these accounts with these numbers, and like anybody, I'll get lost in that same train. I know. Like, I got to get the numbers up because I'm dealing with sponsors, and the sponsors need numbers, and so you're going back and forth with that, and so then you start to do the research, and you're just like, how the hell does this person even have 10 followers, let alone 100,000 or 900,000 followers? And then you're just,
I do that every day almost, it feels like.
and then you're just, but there's a huge awakening. Yeah. Where you're looking at this stuff and you're going, okay, so this is all the result of these stupid things. This is all the result of this addiction to dopamine. And this is all the result to this zombied sort of mode that a lot of folks are in. And I'm being very generalized here, and I may piss some people off, and the ones that I really piss off, you deserve it. But when you're generally just fueling this thing, you really don't want substance.
Yeah.
And you don't want something that's challenging you. You don't want something that's snapping you out of it, because you're essentially in that opium den, and you're just sort of like, okay, all right. And so then when you look at this content, whether it's content on Instagram or it's content on YouTube, and by no means am I saying that there isn't great content on YouTube. YouTube has some really fantastic content that I tune into consistently. But it's incredibly difficult to do something that feels like it even holds a candle to the film stuff.
Yeah,
it feels like it even comes close to the reason why people are listening to the show to begin with, where they want to make movies and they want to get into that stuff. And so it's so funny, because I was hanging out with a guy yesterday who is in the business, and he was like, "Isn't it so odd that you just sort of picked up podcasting to fill time, and now you're getting known to be as a podcaster?" And I'm just like, yeah, I know. And I feel like I'm phoning it in, like, 'cause it's not even a fraction of what it takes to make a really great movie. And that stuff is so dismissed right now.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, I have almost from the very beginning cringed at the whole idea of being called a YouTuber, because you know, it's I've embraced it. I've since embraced it in a way, but at the same time too, I'm kind of like, because you know, in you could probably speak to this as well too. There's a hierarchy in the entertainment industry, whether it's deserved or not. You have feature film people who are kind of like the upper echelon. Oh, I've been nominated for an Oscar. And then those people look down on the TV people, and, oh, you have an Emmy? Oh, please. Oh, whatever. I'm in the Academy, you know? But then you have TV people look down on commercial and music director people. And, you know, and then of course, all of them look down on YouTubers.
Yeah.
So, you know, sometimes it's hard for me to take myself out of that mindset. And, you know, the very first guest that I had on the show, he actually said something which, when he said it, it really kind of reframed my mindset about YouTube and social media. And he said that he looks at TikTok and social media and all of this, you know, all of this stuff that's going on. He looks at it as, you know, almost the new, you know, French New Wave, or, you know, basically the experimental filmmakers of olden days. And when he said that, I was kind of like, okay, that it kind of makes a little bit of sense. But at the same time too, I kind of take TikTok out of that. But, you know, I can see, and I've often had and you could speak to this as well too. I've often heard YouTube is the what is it? The
demonetization.
Yeah, thank you. Of distribution, and I'm like, you know, I don't think so. Yes, in a way it kind of is, but it's kind of not, because guess what? Your YouTube channel goes away and you don't have it anymore.
Yeah. Okay. So there's two sides to me here. There's the old side, which is like, it's all great, man, and this is like, it's great entertainment. You're just doing this sort of thing. But the fact that it's not French New Wave. Like, these are apps. These are programs created in order to sustain hardware that is being sold to us, in order to sustain advertising revenue. And so French New Wave wasn't making clips that was making some dude from Silicon Valley enough money to get his third Ferrari lease, and then barely paying the artists a dime. True. And then when you look at these, man, you're catching me on the right day.
Good, I'm glad, yay.
When you look at these companies and you look at how YouTube got big, YouTube was the one that sort of turned a blind eye to copyright issues when they initially started. So YouTube was the outlet that you could go and suddenly see like movies and suddenly see all this stuff on it, and they were just like, hey, you know, it's their thing, you know, right? But they were responsible for copyright infringement, and that copyright infringement got them as many followers as they possibly could need. And then that got their company off the ground. And then they clamped down on it and they said, well, but it's still kind of loose. You just can't monetize it when you put it up there.
Right.
So then you're just sort of looking at this and it's like, and this is me ranting, like,
Rant
what's
away.
his name that did Napster?
Oh, Sean.
Yeah, that Sean, not Sean Evans, but Sean Evans does Hot Ones.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
But that kid, and he was just like a bitter mother. I think the rumor was that he tried to sell it to the music industry first, and the music industry, obviously there were a bunch of old dudes that couldn't wrap their heads around it, and then he was like, well, F you, I'm going to do it, and then it just destroyed an entire industry. Like,
it did.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. The fact that everybody stole music for how long destroyed the music industry.
At iTunes, I don't think iTunes hit the market until 2003.
Dude, yeah, man. And I worked in a music store when I was a kid. And look, I know that the music business they were selling CDs for $20 when they were literally costing them $1 to make.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
And so
I know.
the profit range was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yes. But now, when you look at it and you go, hey, I'd like to be a music video director and I'd like to have that be my career.
Good luck.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. Like, I'd like to work in a record label and I'd like to find new bands, or I'd like to do this. Not going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's the other side of the argument where it's like, well, technology prevails. But it started from a guy spitefully.
Yeah.
Just saying, you know what? Push his glasses up. F you, man. And I'm just going to ruin your business. And that has been the business model for so many things.
Yeah.
So you sit here and you look at, Facebook, you look at Instagram, you look at Lyft, you look at all this stuff that comes out of Silicon Valley, and you just look at the decimation that it's doing. And this is me going on a serious rant. And you look at the fact that these things have controlled us to such an extent, and it's killing our industry now.
Yeah.
Because it's insanely difficult to get distribution. It's insanely difficult to get people in theaters. It's destroyed distribution plans at this point.
Yes.
And so, then everybody's at home going, well, I've got Netflix.
I was just going to say, it didn't help that Netflix, kind of turned the distribution model upside down with streaming, because now everybody needs a streaming service, and everybody's, charging, $5 here, $10 here, and this and that, I'm sure you're aware of this, huge, massive layoffs at Warner Brothers a couple months ago.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's got everything to do with also Corona and all that stuff too.
Yes, but a big part of it too was just the failed launch of HBO Max, and the horrible numbers, because the person who was running HBO Max, the person who was running things at the time, came from the old model of the old distribution model. Now the guy running Warner Brothers over there has a background in digital. I think he came from Amazon. So that was one of the things that they were saying in the trades at the time, is that Warner Brothers is owned by AT&T. So, the AT&T overlords are looking at that and thinking, well, this is our future. This is where we're going to go. And, again, it didn't hurt or help. I don't know which one it did. But, when Disney Plus launched, I don't know if Iger was already in the mindset of thinking, okay, we're going to have a streaming service, so I need to buy up Pixar, I need to buy up Star Wars, I need to buy Marvel. Oh, let's go buy Fox as well too.
I'm sure, dude.
Yeah.
Sure.
No, I have to believe it is. From everything that I've heard about Iger, he is the shrewdest of shrewd businessmen. And but he has taken Disney to heights that probably Disney had never achieved under Eisner. When Eisner was running things. So, streaming has very much changed the distribution model to where you have show and even shows like Mandalorian that have also just completely, kind of flipped things upside down. It is going to be interesting to see with Warner Brothers, because I know Warner Brothers has for decades had the largest TV. They've been the largest TV studio producer of TV.
For sure. Because they were doing all like the CW stuff and all the DC stuff. Yeah.
But but they're Friends. All kinds. All the Chuck Lorre stuff. Chuck Lorre's got his deal over at Warner Brothers. So, so there's just a massive amount of content. Not to mention, they've also been one of the biggest syndicators in the business as well too, with Ellen and a number of other shows as well too. So it's going to be interesting to. I'm curious to see how. I was actually a little surprised to see that their monthly fee is $15 a month. I was like, wow, that's more than Netflix even.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's weird, man. It's just. And look at me. I'm on your show being a depressing.
No, it's all good.
It's just fascinating as a filmmaker now, because it's hard to say, right? Because I didn't come up in the glory days. I didn't come from that time period,
right? And
I'm basing everything that I know on in the generation before me, on all the propaganda that was written about it after it had already existed. So that's also very difficult. But
right.
The problem that I have right now, trying to get things up and running and trying to get movies approved and pitched, is that you're consistently meeting people who are like, hey, I'm the person that's going to do this. And then so you're talking to these folks and you're making bonds and you're forming these relationships with people that are so far removed from the checkbook.
Yep.
And so you're not necessarily getting, to that to the guy that ran Warner Brothers. You're now getting to a boardroom full of stockholders, and so it's so distant.
Yeah, but it kind of has been that way for a while. It's gotten worse. I wholeheartedly agree with you, because just look at the fact that Warner Brothers is owned by AT&T. Come on, a telecom company. NBC is owned by Comcast. So.
Yeah, but there was I think what it comes down to is I think it's algorithms.
Yes.
I think it was all pre this. I think it was when you had this division that made movies,
right,
and you were just like, I don't understand how this works. And so then they had somebody there that was like curating filmmakers or curating. So they were looking for these people, and then they were making magic or looking for magic because there was no calculation for it.
Right. Right.
And so now they have these algorithms and this research, which essentially is the culminated data of surveys from Facebook on people.
Right.
Like, what's your favorite movie? You know what I mean? And you're just in that stupid mindset, filling these things out.
But they've always kind of looked at numbers and financials in that regard, because I was saying this. One of my favorite movies is Boys in the Hood, and John Singleton is one of my favorite directors. God rest his soul.
Great movie.
And here's a kid who the impetus, or I should say the beginnings of Boys in the Hood, was a little essay that he wrote to get into USC, and that was kind of the genesis for essentially what became that script. And so it's extremely hard to get into USC, let alone the film school. And here is somebody who, while he was in film school, was sought after. CAA, I think, was trying to sign him while he was in film school. So that speaks to the person that he was. But the reality of it is, as much as I hate saying it, as good as that script was and as good as that story was, the reason it got, I think Columbia Pictures was the one who bought the script, but the reason it got bought was because Columbia Pictures saw Spike Lee and what was the movie he did?
She's the One. It's
no. Oh gosh. It's the one he's really. Oh my gosh! How I am so embarrassed that I can't even remember the movie.
I'm just running through. It's not He's Got Game. It's not She's the One. It's
Do the Right Thing. Do the Right Thing.
There it is.
Do the Right Thing. Because Spike Lee broke some major ground with Do the Right Thing, and that was such a box office success that they were like, Columbia's like, oh, we need one of those.
It's true.
And which I'm happy that happened because the film got made. And, and because the film needed to get made, that story needed to be told. And, some little, white boy in Tulsa, Oklahoma who saw it when it came out in 91, 92, really affected me to the point where it's like, I mean, I was already wanting to do this for a career, but it's like, here's a story of a bunch of people who don't look like me, but yet I connected to that story so much. That it transcended race, it transcended everything, and there were so many great things. And I remember this summer I watched it actually again for the first time in probably about 20 years, and it was different. It was a completely different experience for me because now I'm a dad, I've got kids. And so I identified with different characters. It was fascinating. I was kind of like, wow. Now I identify with the Lawrence Fishburne character in this movie. But I say all of that to say that it's always kind of been about that, where you have one breakout success and all of a sudden everybody wants to follow that. It's like, oh, that movie made money. Let's go make a movie like that.
Yeah, but your comment there was that they looked over and they said, hey, they've got Spike Lee. We need to find a filmmaker like him.
Yes.
And today it's not that. Today they don't give a the filmmaker. They really don't.
No, I agree with you on that.
Today it's just like, so according to the algorithms, like
yes.
a combination of like, the Fab Five meets, some sort of Indian Bollywood thing, and let's put this thing together. And
right.
It's just like, well, who's going to direct it? It doesn't matter, and then they sort of like find some sort of social checkbox that they can hit by whoever they cast in that position. And you're just like, and then you watch this stuff and ask yourself serious, and this is probably a dangerous thing to say, but ask yourself seriously, what is the last great movie that you've seen that stood out on any of the streaming services? Like, what's your last favorite
streaming
movie?
Services.
Yeah, because the streaming services are supposedly the future of everything. So what is the last really good one that you liked?
That was actually made by that streaming service.
Or distributed, yeah. Made
okay.
or like specifically acquired, So it becomes a streaming service production.
Right. I would have to say, you're right. No, you're right. You're absolutely right, because I have to say that I think the last original show, if you will, that I think that I've seen on a streaming service was actually Tiger King. So, so that was probably, that would probably be, and prior to that, I think the Netflix thing that I saw before that was the Michael Bay movie that he did with Ryan Reynolds.
Which was terrible. It was terrible, and I love Michael Bay's movies, but that was terrible.
Yeah, I'm a huge Michael Bay fan. I didn't think it was terrible, but I had to watch it in multiple cities. He
had a parkour guy like jumping around in the streets of Italy from like rooftop to rooftop. It's like, why is he in the car?
I didn't say it made sense.
Yeah, what is this guy doing? But look, I think the last one I saw was the Chris Helmsworth one with the really cool stunts and stuff like that. I thought that one was great.
Yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about.
But dude, it's far and few between.
It is.
And most of the stuff that we see right now, like these services are, come to find out that when you rely on algorithms and you're stuck in this sort of like dopamine state, it starts to become everything that we didn't like about television. So now there's a big aspect of Netflix that is the learning channel.
Yes.
Where it's just like, here's all this trash reality drama, docudrama, whatever they want to call it these days. Programs that were terrible. It's like, can we exploit midgets anymore? I don't know. Let's do it on Netflix. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think the thing that kind of started to bother me with Netflix is that there was just so much content. It's like, I'm sorry, I got things to do. I don't have time to sit here and just constantly watch Netflix. And,
But there's such, okay, so imagine this, and this is me just being a complete naysayer. Imagine this, right? A streaming service comes along and says, we're gonna create content. We're gonna create all this content for you guys. Amazing. Okay, so all we need to do though, What we need to do is we need to make sure that you continuously pay that subscription fee every month.
Yep.
So instead of, and the reason why they probably didn't do this is because it would cost them too much money. Instead of just going, okay, so who are the best filmmakers of this generation? What do they want to do next? And sure, they found David Fincher, but straight across the board, go to those filmmakers and say to those filmmakers, very similarly to the way that they used to say in the old days to Warner Brothers, say, you are now a studio director for us. So we're going to put you on the roster and you're going to be able to bang out this amount of content over the next 10 years of your life. I would happily sign up to do that. Like if Netflix came in and said, hey, we want you to become a studio director for us and we want you to work for us and we want to foster you as an artist and we want to foster you as a storyteller and we want to make some of the best content, perfect. But there's multiple dilemmas with that. One, it's expensive.
Yes.
As opposed to, doing a piece in which they can stretch an hour and a half long subject material over 12 episodes. And mostly all that means is like, how many different locations do we have? So we get this warehouse, right?
Yeah.
So let's write like 3.5 hours worth of like looking at each other dialogue scenes in this warehouse. And that costs us nothing. And then, the audience is going to be stringing along because it follows the soap opera model.
Right. Yes.
And they actually call it that, like docu-soaps. There's like a name in the industry for it. Yeah. And growing up as like a Generation Xer, if someone told me that people were excited about watching soap operas all day, I'd be like, what sort of dystopian future are we living in right now? Like, why is this what the we're doing? And so now you're in this world where everybody's sort of like mopping drool out of their face and binging. They call it binging. You know what else?
I know.
You know who else binges? People with eating problems.
I know.
And so
I'm guilty of it too. And I even know that it's it's not good.
But dude,
but it has changed the way I watch television now because even with Mandalorian, Disney tried to kind of break that binge model by releasing it once every week like they used to do with TV. But guess what? I waited. I waited until all the episodes were out there because I knew that I was probably going to want to watch one right after the other, and I didn't want to have to wait.
Yeah, but they were also doing that because Disney had to deal with the problem that they had, which is like, we don't have enough original content.
Yes, correct.
And we own all this stuff, but we just spent entire generations convincing you to buy it on Blu-ray.
I know.
You to buy all this stuff. And so why am I going to pay a monthly fee for all the same movies? Oh,
I've said that to multiple people. I'm like, there is no anyway, but the point of it being is exactly what you just said. It's like, Disney is famous for, go buy it now. We're going to lock it away in the vault and you won't see it again for another 10 years. And then, 5 years. Oh, hey, and so I can't tell you how many copies of Star Wars I had, it was like, it was just, it's ridiculous. So, there was a point at which where I was kind of like, okay, I'm buying, Blu-ray, 1080, whatever it is, and I'm not getting 4K. I'm not doing the 4K.
Dude, it's look, and I'm not dogging on these places.
I know, yeah.
It's just that we're in this mode of this sort of drooly kind of thing, and it took so long for the movie industry to sort of drag itself to that because it's a whole different model, and the model is not necessarily making and selling IP. The model is like subscription based and like logo based and business based.
Yes.
And so then it becomes like, are you an iPhone user? Are you an Android user? And then you start to have like folks clanning up in both directions, and you're just like, at the end of the day, aren't we supposed to be telling stories? Like I got really irritated the other day when I was watching, what was the show? I forget what the show was. I was watching a new show. See, I forget what the show was.
I know, right?
So I was watching a show and they're having these dialogue conversations between two people, and they stretch it way the hell out. So it's just stretched out. And the conversations that these two people are having it's like that sexual tension that they really started to dial up and master in the early days of Friends between Ross and Rachel.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they're still doing it.
Yeah.
And they're still doing it at this level where the conversation's like, he doesn't really look at me and doesn't give me the attention. It's like, this is how we've progressed as humans in the past 10 years, is that we're still sitting here listening to these two people talk about sexual tension. It's like, isn't there another conversation that can happen in between a car blowing up and like another person getting shot in the face?
Yeah.
And this stuff is now being interjected into 15-year-old boy movies, which is the stuff I grew up loving.
Yeah.
Where can you imagine if during Predator, the analytics said, hey, the walk between when Jesse Ventura gets murdered into the next spot, let's build a little sexual tension and add in a little social issue conversation, so that'll lead us into the next scene. And you're just like, as a 15-year-old kid going like, I just want to see them shoot trees again.
True, very true. Yes, yeah. No. I wholeheartedly agree with you, and and it's great. I just lost the train of thought of where I was going. No.
Sorry, man, I derailed you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. But I do want to talk. I mean, we kind of roundabout, kind of talked about your podcast, and I, don't mean to kind of beat a dead horse, but. Who are some of who's probably your, well, I don't know if you want to answer this question. I was going to say, who's your favorite guest and who's your least favorite guest?
I would say favorite guest is tough. We've interviewed all sorts of people. And a lot of the people that I have on the show, she just shut that door on me so that my lighting just went down. Sorry, buddy.
You're fine.
A lot of the people that I've had on the show that I really enjoy are people that just work behind the scenes in the business. And so you end up meeting and hanging out with like Mike Ambrose, like one of the best gaffers in the business. Mm-hmm. And he does like all the Fast and Furious movies. And he actually, I interviewed him before COVID, and he was on set doing what's the actress's name? My brain is so screwed up. She was in Elektra.
Oh, Jennifer
Gardner.
Not Jennifer Lawrence. Jennifer
Gardner, right? Is that
yes?
her name?
Yeah. So was he doing what? Peppermint? Is that?
It wasn't Peppermint. It's a movie that hasn't come out yet.
Oh, okay.
And so they were shooting at like Six Flags, and so he invited me to the set. We actually did the show in the back of his amazing lighting truck.
Nice.
And so then I got to sort of hang out with his team, and I met his key grip. And I met his key electricians, and I met all these people that he's been working with for like 15, 20 years. And it was just a really enjoyable podcast. And it's an interview that you wouldn't normally hear from a technician that is so influential in the business. And so that stuff's been really great.
I think that's one of the things that I do actually appreciate about the podcast is you're giving recognition to people that wouldn't normally get recognition.
Well, yeah, and because at the end of the day, I'm not doing one of my least favorite guests. I got into this fight with over. I'm not doing this show for a network. I'm not doing this show because, like so many interviews that happen anywhere else, that person is hitting the marketplace with something new, and they need to go and do the press circuit.
Right.
And so anytime you hear those interviews, it's always the same sort of stock questions and answers. And for those of you listening who don't understand how that works, when you work with a company that books guests for your show, they will literally send you talking points.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about, but thank you for bringing that up because most people who are watching this don't know that. They don't know how canned the press interviews are. They don't know. They don't know that. They don't know that the only person that's changing in that interview scenario is the person that's doing the interview.
And most of the time when you're in those games and you're working for like a big network or you're working for like a big place, you can't change up the questions because there's a specific reason why that person's there.
Exactly.
What are you here to plug is that move. And most of the guests that I book on the show, I'd say 89% of the guests that I book on the show are people that I find and I find them through Instagram, or I find them through different places. Like when I actually got verified on Instagram, it was like such a great day for me because
Well, you have quite a big following on Instagram.
yeah, I've got a decent amount of real people. I'm not necessarily in the hundreds of thousands. I haven't bought my followers.
No, but you've got 30 plus thousand, yes?
Yeah, and it takes a long time to get to that point.
No, I know.
But the benefit of becoming verified is that you suddenly end up ahead of that pool. So if you're going through your inbox and you see a check next to someone's name, you read it.
True.
And so because of that, I was able to write. I'm not joking. I wrote to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I've written to all these guys. Like it's every once in a while, one of them writes back. And now what I'm doing on the show is that I have the listeners of the show. I'm like, who do you want on the show? And if you want somebody on the show, I'll reach out to them. And if you see me reaching out to anybody on the show, which just happened with David Sandberg, who did Lights Out.
Oh, nice.
I reached out to him on Instagram, and then I had a bunch of the fans be like, get on the show. Because at this point, these guys generally don't want to do this stuff now because they're not promoting anything.
Right.
But it's when the best interviews happen, because then you come on the show and they're just like, what do you want to talk about? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's talk about barbecue. Let's talk about food. Like it doesn't matter, because the purpose of you being here.
Yeah.
And what everybody wants to hear is, what is your life like? What is life like now that you've decided to take that leap? And now that you've decided that you're not going to, dude, when you're a freelancer, you're unemployed.
Yep.
All the time.
Oh yeah, I know. Yep.
I just interviewed, it hasn't come out yet, but the director for the new Tom Hanks summary movie that's on Apple right now.
Yeah.
It's called Wolf. What's it called?
You're gonna
God
make
damn
me
it!
look
I'm
it up.
such a bad interviewer. But I had the director on, really amazing guy. That movie ended up being his third film, and I was like, how the fuck did you get Tom Hanks? How'd you get into that position? We have a really good conversation about it. But afterwards we were joking around. I'm like, so you're unemployed now, right? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, Tom Hanks is unemployed right now. He's like, yeah. It doesn't matter how big you are in this industry.
Correct.
You will always be unemployed.
Yes. That's no, it's absolutely true. And I said this, I've said this to people many times, it's like, the industry is very, very fickle. And just because you're hot one day doesn't mean you're going to be hot the next day. And, the best example, and again, I'm not even going to be able to remember this guy's name. I only ever remember what he did, which is, he did a USC thesis film back in 96, I think. 96, 97, because it came to our attention when I started in the business in 97. So I think he did the thesis film in 96. But anyway, the thesis film was George Lucas in Love. And he took Shakespeare in Love and he put George Lucas, and it's like he made it Star Wars. And it was it was brilliant. It was very well done. It was very, very well done. And I think he even got a meeting with Spielberg, if I'm not mistaken, but he was hot. He was hot in town. And it took a year or more for his first film to actually come out. And it was a throwaway teenager movie that nobody knows anything about. And and he has since directed kind of bigger things. And again, I can't remember any of those movies off the top of my head. But here's a guy who, he sat down with Spielberg. And I have to imagine that at some point in that conversation, Spielberg asked him what he wanted to do. I find it hard to believe that wouldn't have come up, or that, something like that wouldn't have come up. Amblin is such a huge, production force that they've got tons of stuff in the works. But anyway, who's to know exactly why nothing happened for a couple of years, or, that his career kind of never really reached kind of the echelon that you would have expected with as much tension as he was getting from that thesis film. but it happens so often in this industry that, it's like I honestly can't think of another example of somebody who was hot one day and then all of a sudden, just tanked.
Dude, I like being someone that has been in those rooms, being someone that has had those conversations with like, and I'm always teasing my listeners because I'm not literally allowed to talk about specific things.
Oh, I know exactly what well, there's a very specific reason why I won't say names that I would love to say, but I can't.
Yeah, I'm not allowed to. So
yeah.
The reason why he's not hitting is because this business, you don't know.
Yeah,
like,
you don't.
You don't know anything. And I say this on the show all the time. Your job, if you decide that you're going to be like, hey, I'm going to be a cinematographer, right? Your job is to figure out a way to walk away from whatever job it is that you had that was supporting you. Your job is then to learn just enough to get another source of income. Yeah. And then while you're getting that source of income, you're also trying to teach yourself new and amazing technology and tricks. You're trying to figure out the theories of how it's going to work when you can finally get into that position. And a lot of the time you can't get into that position. You have no idea what it's like to direct 150 people until you actually get into the position to direct 150 people.
Yeah.
And so you spend the first 8 years of your career learning all this stuff, building your toolbox.
Yes.
I talk about this all the time, building your toolbox and you're coming up with all your tricks and your techniques that are going to save your ass later on. And then let's say you do that and you do that really well. And let's say that you create amazing short films or proofs of concepts or write amazing scripts. And then you get attention for somehow you bubble over to the top and then you get attention and you have managers and agents and folks that are now looking at you as a source of income, a potential source of income. And so now you're in that world.
Yes.
And everything that you've learned prior to that is necessary.
Yes.
It's needed.
Yes.
But it doesn't mean now.
Yes.
Because now you're in this crazy world of like algorithms and social problems and finance, like all this stuff. Like, dude, just casting a movie and trying to figure out who to put in a film and having people come to you and go, well, you need to pick people with value. And I'm like, okay, well, how about this actor? And they're just like, he doesn't have any value. And I'm like, what do you mean he doesn't have any value? He's done some of the best movies I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And movies that have made money. How does he not have value? And they go, well, no, he doesn't have value. This guy's got value. And then they rattle off someone that you're like, he's terrible. Why does he have value?
Right.
Oh, it's because everybody likes to watch his YouTube clips on Jimmy Fallon.
Oh, I know.
And you're like, okay, so now every time I do a close up, this is the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The guy that that went through and ate bugs on Jimmy Fallon and got a lot of views. Now he has value.
I heard a story of a photographer who, I mean, she's her clientele is the who's who of Hollywood. I mean, she's been doing portraits for, big name people in Hollywood for over a decade. And she got hired on to do a job for Canon, a commercial job to do for Canon. And she was booked on the job. And then at some point before the shoot date actually happened, she got a phone call from Canon and they said, we need to pull the contract. We need to, do whatever. And she's like, well, why? And just because we got this other photographer who's got 100,000 followers on Instagram. And I'm like, so because even though I've been taking portraits of, some of the biggest names in Hollywood for over 10 years, I am less significant than somebody who's been taking, pictures with their iPhone on Instagram and has over 100,000 followers on Instagram. Well, yeah, unfortunately. So she lost this job, working for Canon, and and it's like,
well, dude, but at that point you got to remember that the job of a photographer has basically gone the way of a dodo.
Yeah, no, I know
because once again of these things.
I know.
So once again, they've killed that industry. So now you have entire creative departments in the struggling to not close down advertising agencies.
I know.
And all these creative directors are that like people that build a website for their stuff. It's like just to have an Instagram account, because just like the rest of us, they're all like drooling and going, I need to do some work today.
Oh, I know.
Let's look for someone that does this. Let me type in red sneakers. And then they type in red sneakers and they go, who's got the highest traffic? Okay, let's hire them as a photographer.
Yeah, no, I know. And it's sad, but it's true. And, I was having a conversation today with somebody with a brand who I won't name. That essentially is wouldn't do any social media promotion whatsoever for something that was, yeah, okay, I'm a YouTuber, but I'm not Peter McKinnon. I don't have, 5 million subscribers. So
sure.
Why should you push my tutorial or push my live stream or push this or push that? I can't, I don't bring you the traffic that you're looking for, except for the fact that I've been working in this business and using your product professionally for almost 2 decades now. And, so it's a little disconcerting, but at the same time too, the business side of me understands it. I understand what they're trying to go after and who they're trying to go after. But at the same time too, I also sit there and say, is it really that much more effort to widen and broaden your horizons to include everybody? I mean, in that regard, because all you really care about is people using and buying your product. So who do you care who you're pushing?
Well, but it depends on the company.
I know.
So there are companies that I've dealt with that are very, like Puget. There are companies that really believe in artists and they believe in developing artists and they believe in that sort of stuff. And so with them, when I had first talked to them about getting a sponsorship and had a conversation with the first guy that I talked to over there, he was just like, look, I know you don't have high traffic. I know you don't have, 100,000. I know you're not a Philip Bloom.
Right.
But he really liked my pitch and he really liked the voice of what it is that I was trying to do. And he's like, I see this experience becoming something really great. And so they committed to it. So I love them for that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other companies like Quasar. There's a lot of other great companies that do this sort of thing. But when you're a company and you just hire an individual to do your social media, you hire someone that is in like some sort of 9-to-5 job where they're desperately trying to prove their worth.
I know.
And they're like, hey, so the fastest and easiest way to show traffic is to go find someone with the highest numbers, because then the chances of us getting a click through. Yeah. But there's repercussions to this. Yeah. And I'm hoping that we're going to see those repercussions very soon, because everything's the same. Right. Everything feels the same. Like if you want to get views on Instagram, I would say it's cheeseburgers, tits, and cameras. You know what I mean? And it's whatever. Hold on. It's whatever stimulates you in the least amount of effort possible. Right. Right. There's a great doc on Netflix called The Social Dilemma.
I knew you were going to bring that up. Yeah.
Watch that, because they literally will sit there and they've done such a good job on this doc. Is kind of made for people with low attention spans. They've done a really good job scaring you with it.
That's what I've heard.
but like they're paying attention to how, like, if you just pause on an image, they're counting down. Yeah. So and they've figured out a way to emotionally map each and every one of us because of everything that we do, because of our Google searches, because what time of night we do Google searches. A big move that they do is they actually keep track of when you're looking at your ex and what time of night you're looking at your ex, and then they are feeding you with double down. They're feeding you with advertising that suits that, but they're also stimulating you to continue on further. So oftentimes they'll throw a trick at you where suddenly your ex commented on something 2 years ago, and you get this update on your phone, and you're just like incredibly depressed, and you're continuing down this path. And so they're completely manipulating.
Oh yeah,
the emotional experience that anybody's having with these things, and now it's carried over into life. So even though I'm sitting here bitching about the fact that there isn't any good movies, the fact that we're having trouble finding stuff, and this is supposedly the golden age of everything. But the truth of the matter is it goes beyond the shit.
Yeah.
These guys are inadvertently creating a civil war in America.
Right.
And so with their algorithms and with all their shit that they're designing to keep us like drooling and excited, like, can you believe what the Trumpers are doing? And can you believe what the lefters are doing? And like, I guarantee you, if you're hanging out with somebody and or if you're on the street and there's someone out there with a Trump sign and you're out there with the other sign and you guys are screaming at each other, and that person is saying the most ridiculous stuff that you cannot believe that they believe.
Yeah.
And then that person is looking at you going, you're saying the most ridiculous stuff. Do yourselves a favor.
Yeah.
Exchange each other's phones and look at your feeds.
Yeah.
Because you're going to see on those feeds that it is fueling both sides.
Yes. Oh, no. Absolutely. It absolutely is. And, and it's sad. It truly is sad. I mean, I said it for a long time that, I think probably one of the biggest, it's funny because it's like people will sit there and say, well, it's gotten bad since social media. And I'm like, no, it existed before social media. The only thing that social media did was accelerate it. And
made it easy.
Yeah. Because the reality is, I mean, how long has Facebook been around? Since late
like 2000. I don't even know, dude.
Yeah, late 2000. Yeah, anyway, but
I don't know, man.
No, actually, yeah, probably because I remember when I was at Sony from 2000, in about 2004, I think is when I got my first Facebook account. I think it was by invitation only, but I don't think it went public for a few years after that. But regardless, here nor there, it before Facebook, it was MySpace, and which is kind of the porn of social media, but which again, but you kind of hit the nail on the head as well too, and I've kind of joked with some motion graphics 3D artist friends of mine who are like, we should start an IG account with renders of hot women, 3D model women and whatnot, just show these, I guarantee you we're gonna we'll blow up, and none of us have done that and put any time into it, because the other part of it too is that with social media, it's like all they care about is you being on their platform.
Totally, dude.
And
totally.
So and it doesn't just mean you scanning and looking, it means you posting content. And that's also one of the big things that all of the the guru, the YouTube and social media gurus are like, you need to put content. I'm like, okay, I understand that, but also at the same time too, I'm not a freaking machine. I mean,
Yeah, but what did the owner of Spotify say recently, where he was just like, I'm gonna paraphrase it and ruin it, so look it up. Look up the quote that he said.
Okay.
But he basically came out and was like, any musician, any band, any musician that thinks that they can live financially for a year over one album is out of their minds.
Yeah.
And
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and you just want to grab my throat.
Yeah.
And be like, that's because of what you did.
Yes. It is. It absolutely is. And even to the point where now Spotify and Apple Music are marketing tools. They're not tools to make money, like selling a record or anything like that. They're tools to market. And and which is a little disconcerting. I've never had ambitions of being, a big time musician and whatnot, but at the same time too, hey, I mean, I do music. I love doing music. I'd love to make money doing music, and but it just makes it that much harder. And we were potty training our youngest son last summer, and I kind of made the offhanded promise that I would write him a song if he was successful in what he was doing. And he made me eat my words, and he was successful at what he was doing. And so I had to write him a song, and that became the most popular video on my YouTube channel by far, with over 240,000 views in a year. And it's called The Poop Song. And, because it's, we jokingly made it when we were potty training him. I've tried to replicate that, can't do it.
No.
And but which is not to say, but also at the same time too, when you sit there and think about it, I had, even with 240,000 views for that one video, I still can't monetize my channel because I don't have enough watch time. I don't have enough people, I'm not piping out the content every week for people to go to the channel and do this and do that. So it's taking a lot longer than it takes other people who maybe don't have a family or don't have, the restraints of other real life situations to be able to prevent you from doing it. But the other part of it too is I don't necessarily consider myself to be a reality star. So me having to put my phone on here, put my phone up here and then doing something, it's like, that's not my first instinct. And on the one hand, I do kind of give props to people who's, sorry, just dropped my phone on the ground. I do give props to people who do have that sensibility. Oh, I need to Instagram this, or I need to do this. And then they build up these big, social media followings and stuff like that for being nobody. They're essentially nobody. And, so I don't know. I think the point that I was getting at with even telling that story was 240,000 views for a song. I can't monetize. I can't make money on that. And even if my channel was monetized, 240,000 views doesn't translate into 240,000 pennies or $240,000 or anything like that. And so on the one hand, I didn't make that to make money. I made that for my kids, and I made that with my kids, and I put it up on YouTube to share. So in that regard, I'm not whining about it, so to speak, because I'm blown away that so many people have found it. But to what the head of Spotify said, it's, why can't I make money? Why do I only get to make $1,000 when my song streams 1 billion times?
Because he's making the cash.
No, I know. I know what the answer is. And and I know that that's a big reason why somebody like Taylor Swift held out for so long to actually cut a specific deal with Spotify to make money off of her streams. And the reality is, a shrewd artist like her or Kevin Hart or somebody who has that social media backing, they have the ability to be able to make those special deals,
Sure,
and,
like Joe Rogan and his podcast.
Yeah,
it makes sense. The question is life any better?
Yeah, I know.
Is your life better that you can go online because you can't sleep at night? So you go online at 3 a.m. and you order something and it shows up on your doorstep the next day. Is your life better? Are you happier? Like, have you addressed your issues with your father? Have you done any of that stuff? Is it better? Okay. So is it worse? Okay. So because this thing exists and because there's such a big monopoly on things, all of the little stores have shut down.
Right.
All of the little places in which you can make money have shut down. Okay. A good reference for this, because out in here, California, Lyft is doing the baloney that they're doing. Lyft, right? So Lyft is an amazing thing, right? You can pick up your phone and if you have social anxiety like everybody does right now, you don't physically have to call anybody. Yeah. You don't have to get on the phone and be like, this is my address. You literally just post it in here. And then you don't even have to talk to the person that picks you up.
Yep. Yeah,
I know. You get in the back seat, and so they play, and so you can spend more time on your phone. You don't actually have to talk and deal with this stuff. It's so amazing. And Lyft comes out and says, hey, guess what? You're going to work for us. So we're going to create an industry for you. So anybody that needs a job can get a job. Can you imagine? In 1999, if you came out and said, hey, how'd you like to be a taxi cab driver? everybody would go, get the hell out of here.
Or even
I don't
better,
want to drive cabs.
or even better, how would you like to get into the car of somebody that you've never met before? I know.
How would you like to be a taxi cab driver? So, okay, whatever. So then times have changed.
Yeah.
So then they make this app and they have this thing. And so now they're offering jobs. And so when you're out here in California and you're an actor or you're someone that really, it doesn't behoove you to have a 9-to-5 job because you have to take auditions, you got to do all this sort of stuff. So this is like a blessing in disguise.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now you work for these guys. And so you're like, this is great. I can do this and be an actor.
Yeah.
This is like a 10-year career commitment.
Yeah.
These companies even go, hey, how would you like, you don't have a car? How would you like to have us buy you a car? And then you can pay us for that car with the amount of time that you do because this is a career move for you. So now you're going to be doing this for this period of time. And people are like, okay, great. That sounds like a good thing. That's what I'm going to do. This is what people don't know. And I've done this, and I'm not supposed to talk specifics because I signed an NDA. But when I was back in Boston, one of the things that I had to do as a freelancer is I would take specific camera gigs. Anytime a camera gig would come at me, they'd ask me to go do stuff. And so Boston is a place where a lot of these tech places sort of figuring. So I got asked to go in and videotape some new remote drone technology. And so I went into this place, and it turns out that this was a place that was developing automated cars. And so I'm in there, and I'm not saying it's Lyft. So I went in there and, because I'm a podcaster and I ask questions. And so I had been in there early. I was in there like 45 minutes before we were going to do whatever this thing was that I'm not allowed to talk about. So then I'm sitting there with the head scientist, right? The head guy that's doing all this stuff, the guy who's developing the technology for cars to drive themselves, right? And he works for a company that does this. And so I'm sitting there looking at him, and they're very specifically, like us humans do, very minutely focused on detail, where it's just like, we're having problems with automated cars reacting to people on bicycles. And he's very specifically focused on that thing. And I said to him, like, do you ever think about the consequences
of what you're doing?
And he's like, well, what do you mean? I said, let's use Spotify as an example, right? Because I don't want to insult the guy. So I'm like, so do you think the guys that developed Spotify were looking in the future and saying, hey, we're going to destroy any sort of income for the artists that do this sort of thing? We're actually going to destroy entire industries. We're going to destroy, music video directing industries. We're going to destroy all that stuff with what we're doing because I want a boat. I want like 6 boats. You know what I mean? And so then I talked to the guy, and he's like, well, I don't think that company's going to last. And he had all this sort of stuff that he was rattling off. And I go, I'm talking about you, dude. So when you create this stuff, you're going to destroy the trucking industry. And this is an industry generationally of people that are proud. They buy their own trucks. They buy their own stuff. That is what they do. That is how they make their income. You're going to destroy that. You're going to destroy the taxi cab industry. Now you're going to destroy the people that repair vehicles, the people just the line of that you're going to decimate, all so that you can now integrate into your subscription-based program this. And to make things worse, you've lied to the that are driving for you. So these people are out there driving, making you money that you are then rolling into research and development to null their position in life. And so you look at the stuff that they're doing in California right now, and like I said, this isn't Lyft that I went and worked for, but so you look at what's going on here in California, where they were like, look, you got to treat the people that work for you as employees. They need health benefits. You need to pay in for all that sort of stuff. You need to make it more responsible. And so they're coming out and they're going, we're not a driving company. We're a tech company, man.
I know
And
exactly what you're talking
so
about.
then you sit there and you go, is it their fault? No, it's this person's fault. I don't want to talk to anybody.
No, yeah, because they created an industry based off of,
Social anxiety.
well, yeah, exactly. I mean,
Social anxiety. That's why Grubhub. Dude, I can get so deep. Oh, I'm sorry, man. I just totally
I know, and
hijacked
I
the
was
show.
just looking at the clock, and I'm like, oh man, we've been at this for over an hour or so.
I could give you more time, man. So it's fine. I just hijacked your show.
You're totally fine. You're totally fine. That was something I was noticing about your show, your podcast, is that you have super long episodes and then you have super short episodes. And does that have more to do with the fact that you just want to run it unfiltered and see what happens, or I mean, do you?
Yeah, I mean,
because
the
you
rule-
obviously produce the show, so you can go back after the fact and cut stuff out. But
Yeah. I mean, we don't. I mean, the only time that we've ever cut things out is if I say things too unfiltered, then I'm like, hey, look, I'm ruining my chances in this industry, so I need to cut that out.
I've been there. I have.
Yeah, that's the only time I ever cut anything.
Yeah.
But our rule of thumb is the show is as long as it's interesting.
Yeah. No. That makes
And sometimes
sense.
I'll have a guest that, no offense, and a lot of people don't like talking.
Right.
And I'm not asking just, the best of the best. I'm not getting like, Ben Affleck, who just is so used to talking on the thing. I'm getting like a really nerdy tech guy.
Well, but even, even somebody like Ben Affleck, I mean, I guarantee you turn the camera off and he is probably the most boring person you will ever meet. Yeah. I mean, because to a certain extent, and this is more for actors than it is for people behind the camera. But actors have trained their whole lives to literally be somebody else or do something. They know when to turn it on and when to turn it off. And the really good ones can do it at the drop of a hat, whether it's crying on camera or whatever it is. So in that respect, I almost feel like you're probably going to get the most real conversation out of somebody who's never been in front of the camera. And so I think that's one of the most interesting things about your show is
Thanks.
You're right. You have some of the most honest conversations with people who wouldn't normally talk about something in particular. But
why do it otherwise then?
I agree with you. And you found an audience, so how many years have you been doing the podcast?
3 years now.
You've been doing for 3 years.
We just did the 100th episode, and that's because the first year that I was doing it, I was just doing it randomly.
Okay,
so I was gonna
say
every week.
You do, so you do an episode every week, but that first year you weren't.
No, I was just doing it.
Gotcha.
Because I had, like I do often, I had my toes in so many different things.
Right.
And so you sort of hit a point where you're like, is this thing gonna do? And then you're like, okay, all right. And then with the show, I started to actually feel good after doing podcasts, and I was like, okay, I guess this means something.
Well, and it's funny too because I met you actually in person. I knew who you were, but I met you in person last year at
the Puget thing up here, right?
Yeah, but I can't remember I think it was the one at the beer bar that they. But was that Adobe Max? I think that was Adobe Max.
Yeah, because I didn't go to the thing.
Okay, you didn't. Yeah, you didn't go to the one at SIGGRAPH. So this was the one at Adobe after Adobe Max.
Yeah, and the guys had just called me up and they were in town.
Right.
So the Puget guys were in town. So I just came over and they're like, "You want a free beer?" And I was like, sure.
So I think I heard you talk about this as well too on Puget's Workflow Wednesday, which is you moved out here just before COVID hit, or not just before, a few months, 3-4 months?
3-4 months back.
Yeah. So you came out here for a very specific reason.
Yeah. I can't. Yeah, because we were coming out here because I've got a couple films in development.
Okay.
And so we crossed the country because it's very difficult to sort of do that stuff on the
Right.
East Coast when there's 3 hours difference.
Right.
And so like I'm doing a full day running a production company there, plus doing podcast. And
Right.
then at like 9:00 at night, I'm getting on conference calls.
Yes.
And like trying to sort of figure that stuff out. So it just didn't make any sense. And then the other sort of thing that I learned, because I changed my whole career path a year ago, was that I spent 19 years in Boston and in the East Coast, sort of working with amazing crews, amazing teams, people that will fly cross country to work with me. I'll fly them out here in a heartbeat to work with me. But I'm networking in the wrong place.
Yeah.
And so like you hit a point where the glass ceilings really hits, where like I was directing the top of the line commercials that I could ever do. I was
Yeah.
doing Sam Adams commercials, and I still had like 2 roommates, you know what I mean? And so you're just like, okay, so this is not going anywhere.
Right.
And then it was like, well, I hope it's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
If I go to the hub.
Yeah.
And if not, then the world's in a sad state right now. So then we just packed up, and my girlfriend Gina is also a photographer. She's a fashion photographer, and her moving cross country was actually a bit scarier
Yeah.
because she didn't have as much contacts as I did, but she's doing better than I am. Right? So
That's great. That's good. I'm glad to hear that somebody's doing something.
yeah, she's been working her ass off. So it's been good, man. It was moving cross country was such a wild. Once again, we actually document on the show. We actually do a whole series on what it's like to pack your life up and transport across. And it was such a crazy thing because you get so stuck in your ways.
Yes.
And it's a safety measure.
Yes.
Right. So like there's a pack of wolves that
Yeah.
are roaming through your neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
And you make that mistake twice where
Yeah.
you're like, if I go down Main Street, then I'm not, the wolves are on Main Street. So I'm just not going to go Main Street. And so
Yeah.
then you start to develop these like rhythms.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, years go by and you're like, why am I doing this?
I know.
And so, and then it's really scary, especially when you're, middle-aged and you've got a career and you've got, contacts and reputations and you've got all this sort of stuff. And you're like, I'm going to just throw all that out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was fascinating. So it was, and then the best part about it was that life stayed the same.
Yeah.
And life actually got better because there was like more things to be inspired
Right.
by. And
Right.
So
For me, I'm very glad that I did it when I did it.
When'd you do it?
I came out here in '97. Literally the day after graduating from film school, I was in a car with my stepmom driving out here to Southern California, and I lived with some family friends for about a month or two, until I got into a car accident and totaled my car, and I had to. The only way I was going to be able to get to work was to walk to work, so I had to get an apartment that was close to the office. But I did it right out of college with no attachments, nothing, none of that stuff. And because I have to say, if I did it 10 years later, or maybe even 5 years later, like if I stayed in Chicago and because Chicago, big advertising town, I could have had a great career in Chicago and even potentially found myself, out in Los Angeles from Chicago because you have Second City and you have all those other, wonderful Chicago institutions that gave us so many great talents. I could have done that. And so I'm glad that I came out here when I did because I don't envy you having to be in one place for as long as you were in and having a career in that town as long as you did and then just packing up and moving somewhere new. And you're friends with Joey Cornerman. I always mispronounce his last name. I always
Corman?
Yeah.
I think it's Joey Corman. I think that's what I say. Probably.
But because he's got a really, really great book, The Freelance Manifesto, which one of the things that he talks about, in there is that the reality is that, and it doesn't matter what town you're in, they all need freelancers. They all need, the skill set that you have. And it's just a matter of tapping into that and finding it. And, I wish I had his book. I wish I had his book, years ago when I'd started. But also too, when I came out here, I thought I wanted to be a studio executive, So I went about doing what I knew how to do to be a studio executive. Get an internship, get hired on at the company from that internship, work, start out as an assistant, work my way up, and and it was somewhat successful because in 3 years I was running the story department of the television division, which was only me and my boss at that particular company. But then they let us go. Yeah. And so then it was like, oh, well, what do I do? And I have to say, for 3 years reading scripts, because, and that was at a time too where, as an intern or even as an assistant, you're still working, 80 hours a week because you might be working 60 hours a week at the office, but you're still, you've got scripts to read, books to read, coverage to do, all this development stuff that most people don't. Go see the movie Swimming with Sharks. Or go watch Entourage, because those two things are that TV show and that movie do such a really good job of kind of talking about the ins and the outs of the traditional kind of Hollywood system. Some of that has changed since then. I don't think a show like Entourage would ever be able to be made right now. And nope. Yeah, and so I thought that that's what I wanted to do, but I got so burnt out with all of that in doing that in 3 years that it's like the first thing after that I was like, man, I don't want to have anything to do with entertainment. Now I was working in the entertainment industry, so of course I'm going to have something to do with entertainment, but I got out of TV development, I got out of all of that, and I kind of left it all behind, and I got a job at Sony, ironically working in digital. And Sony was doing stuff at that time that nobody else was doing, and in a lot of ways was a huge precursor to what came after. And so the technology and the things that we were doing then blew up after Sony gave it all away. And so it's it's fascinating that Netflix is where it is when we were doing that back in 2000 and 2001 2002. And so anyway, that's neither here nor there. But the point of kind of what I was getting at is that I'm glad that I came out here when I did, because I don't think there's any way that I would have come out here or had the courage, like you said, to pack up everything and just move out here. And you came out here a few months before COVID. So you came out here because you had a couple projects in development. What's going on with those projects?
What's that?
What's going on with those projects?
Well, we're in COVID.
So that, I did a Workflow Wednesday with Puget a few months ago, and one of the things that we talked about a lot was the future of the industry now, in kind of what we're, where we're at. And I have friends who are just starting to go back to work. I've got a DP friend who's working on a big TV show right now. She's locked down in a hotel room for the entirety of the show. Can't leave. All she can do is go to set and come back to her room. And so I'm glad that she's working, and she doesn't, she's single, so it's not that big of an issue. But I can only imagine what it's like for people with attachments, because that's not the only show that's doing it. Almost every show is doing that now. And, they got COVID monitors on set, people carrying 6 foot sticks around, making sure everybody's, social distance and whatnot. So what do you see as the future? What do you see as the future of this?
Well, dude, I mean, the future is that there needs to be a vaccine.
Well, but even with a vaccine, we have a flu vaccine. It's not a cure for the flu.
No, but I mean, it'll at least get things going. It's just, it's fear, man. So like, look, people get sick.
Yeah.
I know some people that got sick. We know some people that have died from it. And it exists out there.
I'm not saying it's not real.
It's not that it's not real at all, but there also hits a point where it's like, you got to get back to work.
Yes.
And I understand both those avenues of it.
I know.
Look, the reason why they have COVID testing and they have all that stuff is because they need the insurance bond.
I know.
Wouldn't be able
I
to
know.
get an insurance bond
without
any of that stuff. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have that stuff. You should, because people don't want to get sick.
Right.
It's just, I think that we're in this weird point right now. It would be nice to think of this as the tail.
I know.
Of it, right? This would be nice for us to be thinking that this is at the lull. But so many people, including execs and including financiers, they are like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Like, what happens what happens in November?
Yeah.
What happens in January?
Yeah.
And so there's stuff that's being greenlit right now that was already ready to rock.
Yeah.
So like the stuff that's going is stuff that was already ready to go, and they figured out a way to run through these systems and do that stuff. Is this going to be the way it's always going to be? I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that there's enough really smart, really amazing people out there developing this sort of vaccine and vaccinations and stuff. And like you said, it's like the flu.
Yeah.
So like the flu shows up, we all have our vaccines. The people that
Well,
vaccinate,
not all of
people
us.
that-
That's the
yeah,
other
exactly.
part of it too.
The people that don't get the flu, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so then the season changes.
Yeah.
And then you're on to the next thing. So I'm not a medical professional, so I can't be 100% specific about it. My hope is that once these vaccines start rolling out, once that stuff starts rolling out, then most importantly, the people that are in charge of financing, the people that are maintaining financing and concerned about financing, start to feel comfortable again.
Right.
And start to let that stuff happen. And we're in such a weird place right now mentally.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I went on such a diatribe about these devices, because
Yeah. It's all feeding into everything.
it is.
You know, I stopped. I know at the beginning of this. So lockdown started here in Los Angeles March 13th, Friday the 13th, and within a couple of weeks, within a couple of days, we were already like at each other's throats here in the house. And and so after 2 weeks, I literally deleted every news app off of my phone.
Yeah.
And and on top of that, I turned off notifications almost every day, throughout most of the day. And I very specifically and intentionally made it so I had to go look at my phone, because I've got an Apple Watch. So it's like, I turn notifications off on the watch as well too, because it was driving me nuts. Every time I get a notification, I'm looking at this. And I'm not paying attention to my wife or my kids or anything like that. And, but at the same time too, sometimes it's hard because you want to know what's going on in the world. And, but I found that removing the apps and removing the notifications at least gave me the more control over when I looked at things.
Sure.
And when it wasn't, like you said, the dopamine rush. And I actually even got off of social media. I was off of social media for probably about a month, and maybe to my detriment. I don't know. I don't have the kind of following that you have, but at the same time,
But
too,
dude, that's the only reason why I'm on social media.
well,
like,
but that also became an intentional thing as well too. It's kind of like, okay, I need to get back on social media. I need to start putting up work and posting stuff and doing things and whatnot. So your stuff is still in development. Your girlfriend is actually working. Are there any project, like what do you do to fill your time? Do you have freelance stuff that you're actually able to do as well too from home?
Well, I've done a couple of things. Like I've done a couple of edits, a couple re-edits. I work. I do stuff occasionally for this company, Dale Strong, which is a knife company, and I've done some stuff with them. And we're talking to a couple of other companies similarly to do some more work on that front. These days, because we're being very picky with how we're spending our time, I can be specific about who I work for, which is nice. But other than that, man, I've just been researching, developing, doing the podcast. The podcast is like You know, it takes up so much time. And you said that earlier in the show. It's there's a reason why there were entire departments in charge of like putting together Friends and putting it on TV.
Oh, I know. It's crazy. I thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you again, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Go find his podcast. It's In Love with the Process. Yes, that's what it's called, right?
Mm-hmm. In Love with the Process. You can find it on Apple. You can find it on any of the places that you look for podcasts. So
okay.
It's out there.
I got people peeping through the door already. Thanks again, Mike. I appreciate it very much.
Okay.